Urgent, hell for Kadyrov's men. The GUR completely destroyed Akhmat. The enemy's special forces were wiped out. You won't believe who the mole was. The traitor was right next to Alaudinov. A real gut punch for Kadyrov. Zelensky slammed his fist on the table. The parade will turn into a bloody fiasco for Putin. Kyiv has outplayed the Kremlin hard and is dictating its own rules. Targeting Red Square. A surprise for Putin. Ukrainian warriors are already zeroing in. The Iron Fist is tightening overhead. Putin's. The Caucasus is turning to the west. Yerevan and Baku are pulling the ground out from under the bunker dwellers' feet. A death sentence. Moscow's ambition. All this in our episode Hellpoint. It happened. The GUR completely outsmarted Akhmat. The enemy's special forces were simply destroyed. This is a humiliation that Kadyrov will not forget. While Alaudinov is desperately trying to come up with ridiculous excuses, the truth is breaking out. The Akhmat unit fell into a deadly trap. And a Kremlin traitor helped the GUR. Watch for all the details. A unique special operation to eliminate Kadyrov's men was successfully carried out by the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. More than 228 soldiers from the Akhmat unit were knocked out of the front line. The GUR conducted a unique operation in the Sumy region of Ukraine from February to April of the year 2026. Ukrainian soldiers from the Shamanbat unit, which includes fighters from Free Chechnya, together with the 104th Territorial Defense Brigade, Horin, carried out a complex operation to destroy the Akhmat fighters, who were operating in the Sumy region.
So, when we look at the history of these brave individuals, we have to ask, how did our soldiers manage to endure such difficult conditions and overcome the overwhelming odds they faced on the battlefield during those long years of service?
Managed to learn the enemy's plans so precisely and track all their actions. As reported by the Defense Intelligence, the information about the enemy's plans and intentions was passed to the scouts by an agent. The agent turned out to be a former soldier, the same to Akhmat. Ukrainians listened to every meeting. Alaudinov, those
at our points where we have patriarchs shooting something from a corner caliber, all this needs to be properly sanctioned so that there is a clear public bonus. That is to say, because of the shareholders and tank crews, you can't even shoot properly.
According to the GUR, the agent installed a listening device which was delivered across the front line by drones in the meeting room of Akhmat. All conversations were recorded. The Ukrainian side knew everything. Because all the information was in their hands, Ukrainian units were able to strike precisely at the locations where Kadyrov's men were concentrated. The agent explained how he made contact.
By the divine grace and infinite mercy of the Almighty, I was finally able to successfully establish a direct line of communication and contact with him after much dedicated effort. As a direct and significant result of this highly complex, sensitive, and meticulously planned special operation which has been carried out,
according to the Ukrainian main intelligence directorate, the Akhmat special forces suffered their heaviest losses since the start of the full-scale invasion. 41 people were officially eliminated, 87 were wounded, and more than 100 are missing in action. But of course, the Russian side does not want to admit this. And Alaudinov,
the authorities have officially issued a formal statement declaring that every single piece of evidence and information presented here is entirely fabricated, completely fraudulent, and lacks any basis in reality, maintaining that the entire situation is nothing more than a total hoax. Which, well, I really must say, you truly deserve a 5 for your incredible work with artificial intelligence, and of course, for all the important LGBT work you're doing. Well done.
He also called Ukrainians kaskari, which was to be expected. But as experts have pointed out, they will be working on improving themselves thoroughly after this.
High quality content when all of this, well, they try to criticize, saying it's all lies, that this never happened. That is, from my point of view, everything looks as truthful as possible. This is not artificial intelligence. This is not a fake. In other words, everything fully corresponds to reality. I am sure that work is being done there regarding the elections. So, no matter how you look at it, even the Kadyrovites, both Zoga's Kadyrovites and Russian military counterintelligence, they always try to find strong leaks of such information so it can be preserved for the future.
Ukrainian intelligence has once again proven that it will find and eliminate anyone who supports aggression against Ukraine. So Alaudinov shouldn't be making excuses, but rather start using his head. And Chechens should think very deeply about whether they really want to serve the Russians, who once waged the same kind of bloody war against them, and depart from this world in such disgrace. or live a peaceful life. On the side of truth. Shock! Ukraine is ceasing fire. Zelensky has outplayed the Kremlin hard and is dictating his own rules. While Moscow was preparing for parades, Zelensky slammed his fist on the table and put forward demands to the dictator that sent Russian generals into a panic. What is the double trap behind the scenes of the negotiations, and what will all this mean for Moscow? Watch. A truce, but not on the official Moscow terms. While Russia is actively preparing for May 9th, Kyiv makes a strategic move and breaks Putin's scenario.
Zelensky responded to Putin's proposal for a truce. Kyiv is introducing a ceasefire regime starting from May 6th.
Earlier this week, Moscow officially announced a unilateral ceasefire for May 8th through 9th. However, Kyiv has emphasized the fact that Ukraine has not received any formal proposals for a ceasefire from the Kremlin.
Either from Lavrov or accordingly from Zakharova? No. And as for any proposal from Putin, officially I emphasize, I stress this point, there is no such thing. The second major trap was the distinct possibility that, if the Ukrainian president agrees to this formal truce, it would in turn significantly diminish the political agency of the Ukrainian president himself within the international community.
After all, the Ukrainian side cannot reject this proposal, and that is precisely where the third trap lies.
Russia is trying to and is using the opportunity to accuse the Ukrainian side of being incapable of making agreements. In other words, this will be used as an argument to appeal to the armed forces of Ukraine.
However, Kyiv quickly regained the initiative.
Zelensky stated that human lives are more important than any Russian parades.
The president of Ukraine considers a two-day truce unserious, so he announced the start of the regime, of silence and mirror measures on the front line. In other words, silence only if it is observed by the other side as well.
But what exactly does this mean for us, and how should we truly begin to interpret the deeper implications of such a surprising development in this situation?
What is most important is that now the leadership is in Ukraine's hands, and it can trap itself.
This is the enormous and vast nation of Russia. Accordingly, it is Ukraine that establishes the actual possibility of a ceasefire, and moreover, actively puts to the test the very nature of that ceasefire. If the Russian Federation fails to reach an agreement, then Ukraine has every legitimate and legal right at the moment of launching strikes, specifically at the moment of the so-called military parade in Moscow.
Thus, Russia has a chance to secure the much-desired silence and control on May 9th, but only if they accept the conditions of Kyiv. And
then give them a chance to rest. We don't have any days off at the moment. We truly apologize because of Russia and because of their unprovoked attack. So we give them a day of rest, and early the following morning, after the 9th, they will resume killing us again. Let's see how this situation goes.
But against this backdrop, threats are also being made. Along with the two-day ceasefire, the Russian Ministry of Defense did not miss the opportunity to issue a threat, and
The Russian Ministry of Defense immediately threatened to strike Kyiv if their parade is disrupted.
is the bunker dweller really so afraid to come out on May 9th that the Kremlin couldn't come up with any other words?
Well, it's unlikely that the Ukrainian side can be scared by anything anymore. There have already been strikes on the capital, constant strikes using ballistic and cruise missiles.
It turns out unexpectedly that Russia's scare tactics have dealt a blow to Putin's own reputation.
These official public statements appear to serve as a form of important strategic support for the Ukrainian side, at the moment when they chose to refrain from launching strikes during the scheduled military parade. And even Russians themselves are asking questions. It turns out so. Tanks and accordingly columns of cadets are more important to the Russian dictator than bombing Belgorod, Bryansk. Why, accordingly, was there no threat from the Russian Federation at the time of the strikes? Because that's all.
But this is not the end. Another risk factor appears: the threat of launching the Oreshnik from May 5th to 8th. After all, Russia closed the airspace over the training ground, Kapustin Yar.
If we are talking about the possibility of using the Oreshnik before the parade takes place, then what should be done? Then, with the corresponding statement from the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, what will be used in the event of a Ukrainian strike at the time of the parade? all the older weapons of the Russian Federation for a corresponding strike on the territory of Ukraine, at the very least not later.
And now everything depends on Russia, because Zelensky's recent statement about drones over Moscow could become a reality.
For many, many years, they have not been able to afford having weapons present at the parade. And Ukrainian drones could also fly over this parade. This shows that they are no longer as strong as they used to be.
Russia was counting on imposing its own truce on specific dates and on its own terms. But Kyiv seized the initiative and broke the imposed scenario. And now the choice is up to Russia.
We have changed the paradigm of the war. Now it is no longer Ukrainians who fear possible strikes by the Russian Federation on Ukrainian territory. Dates that are sacred to Russians. Now it is the Russians. They look at the calendar, and when they see dates that are sacred to them, they realize with horror that this could be a reason for strikes on the territory of the Russian Federation.
Well, if Moscow refuses to observe the truce, the armed forces of Ukraine have already prepared a fiery gift for them. The parade on Red Square is in the crosshairs. While Moscow is gathering air defense systems from all over the country, Ukrainian soldiers are already taking aim at the Kremlin. The armed forces of Ukraine have started their own parade rehearsal. Ukraine's iron fist is tightening over the dictator's head. More details ahead. Putin's victorious parade on May 9th is under threat of being disrupted. Not long ago, Russia boasted one of the most powerful air defense systems in the world. S-400 Panzer, multi-layered defense around key cities. But even now this system is increasingly showing cracks. This is reported by Forbes. Ukrainian drones regularly break through the defenses and strike targets deep inside Russia, from military bases to oil refineries and even areas near Moscow. In April 2026 alone, there were more than 400 long-range strikes. And these are not random attacks, but a systematic campaign.
As of today, it has become increasingly clear that Russia is significantly weakened in its overall strategic ability to effectively secure and protect the vast majority of its sovereign airspace from potential threats.
Donald DeGille, a former American officer and military analyst, stated that Ukraine's strikes are becoming more accurate, more frequent, and better planned. Ukraine is using data on the locations of Russian air defenses, and it strikes where they are weakest. The result is breakthroughs even through several layers of defense. Russia's problem is not only the breach of its defenses, Russia is also losing the critical air defense systems themselves, anti-aircraft complexes and essential radars, command and control centers.
These strategic military outposts and defensive positions are being systematically and regularly destroyed by a continuous barrage of heavy artillery strikes and aerial bombardments that occur on a daily basis across the region.
On top of this, there is another critical problem, a shortage of missiles, especially those like Osa and Pantsir. Without an additional supply of missiles, even the most advanced air defense system becomes virtually blind. Another weak point is coordination. Effective air defense means not only missiles, but also a detection, control, and rapid response system. And this is exactly where Russia has serious problems. Without a unified integrated system, even a multitude of resources yields no results. Against this backdrop, Ukraine is changing the rules of the game. Drones are attacking not only the front lines, but also deep behind enemy lines, hundreds or even thousands of kilometers away. Strikes on aircraft, bases, oil refineries, logistics, even targets 1,500 to 1,700 kilometers from Ukraine are no longer out of reach. Russia is effectively losing the concept of a secure rear.
The limited and isolated pockets of layered air defense that still remain along the immense and expansive territory of the Russian Federation, specifically Moscow and the surrounding Moscow region, as well as, for example, the temporarily occupied Crimean Peninsula and certain specific areas where complexes of strategic importance to the military-industrial enterprises are currently stored. Overall, this represents a relatively minor and insignificant portion of the total airspace. And as the demonstration clearly illustrates, even a highly sophisticated and densely layered air defense system like the one in Moscow cannot cope.
Another indicator is the situation around Moscow. Despite powerful air defense, strikes occur even here. This has both military and political effects. The May 9th parade is a key event for the Kremlin. But this year, even its format is in question, with speculation that it might take place without military equipment due to the threat of attacks. The reaction of the Russian authorities showed that mobile internet is being restricted in major cities. Security measures are being strengthened. There is
a growing realization within Russia's military and political leadership that it is simply not possible to guarantee absolute and total security. On the 9th of May, they simply won't be able to do it, not even in the capital cities. That's why they are now trying, in an ultimatum-like manner, to impose some kind of May truce on Ukraine. At the same time, they are unofficially reaching out to the Ukrainian side, not publicly, but through diplomatic channels with a formal request. And right now, they are actively trying to put a great deal of pressure on Ukraine by working through Donald Trump.
Ukraine's strategy is long-term. It's not about a single strike, but about constant pressure. The Russian air defense system, which was supposed to be a guarantee of security, is turning into a weak spot. And while the Kremlin tries to hide this, the reality is different. The skies over Russia are becoming less and less controlled.
The Caucasus is turning toward the west. Zelensky is turning the game upside down. Yerevan and Baku are raising a fist over Putin's head. A meeting with Pashinyan in Yerevan and recent tough agreements with Aliyev. This is not just diplomacy. This is a coordinated blow to Moscow's ambitions. Watch how the Caucasus is knocking the ground out from under the dictator's feet. A geopolitical shift in Armenia, which for decades depended on the Kremlin for security, is now welcoming leaders from all over Europe. Yerevan hosted the first ever bilateral EU summit in Armenia, and this event took place after the 8th summit of the European Political Community, which was held in Ukraine.
The European Union summit in Brussels is currently taking place.
Yerevan is clearly demonstrating that the European security model is replacing increasingly ineffective security structures like the CSTO. The post-Soviet space is no longer an internal affair of the Kremlin.
Of course, after the last Armenian-Azerbaijani war took place, it became increasingly and painfully clear to everyone in Armenia that Russia was ready to give up Armenia without any significant hesitation or trouble, and it simply wouldn't do anything for them. And this marked Armenia's decisive turn towards the West and towards Europe. And the European Community Summit is, in a way, a clear and definitive testament to this strategic vector of Armenia's development for the foreseeable and immediate future.
The presence of Volodymyr Zelensky at the summit and his direct participation in the event is a clear declaration that the era of Russian dominance in the Caucasus is over, and the old methods of Kremlin control no longer work. The president of Ukraine also held a meeting with the Prime Minister of Armenia.
The current Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan, has been a central figure in the nation's recent political history. So, as a matter of principle, Armenia is even prepared to go to such lengths as to... The decision to invite the president of Ukraine to Armenia was something that, in Russia itself, many saw as a direct slap in the face, an insult to their sense of imperial grandeur. Various Z propagandists and so-called war correspondents, of course, immediately became furious, demanding that the Russian peacekeepers stationed in Gyumri be withdrawn.
And there are 5,000 of them, should immediately attack Zelensky and capture him as a prisoner. And everything in that spirit. Well, of course, none of this is serious. Well, this is a slap in the face. The native Russian language.
Influence in the South Caucasus is rapidly declining, the Kremlin is losing its position as a key player, and the region is actively reorienting itself toward new.
These are the various nations and strategic partners who have formed a strong coalition, working together as dedicated allies to provide mutual support and maintain global stability through their shared interests and cooperative efforts. Even among states that are hostile to each other, such as Armenia and Azerbaijan.
Let us recall that on April 25th, the first visit since the start of the full-scale war took place. Volodymyr Zelensky's visit to Azerbaijan, the parties solidified agreements in the areas of security, energy, and the defense industrial complex.
Even before the period of the full-scale invasion, there was cooperation. After the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, it only intensified. Ukraine has always recognized the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan has always recognized the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine. And now, the possibility of military, technical, and other forms of cooperation with Azerbaijan is being discussed quite actively. For Ukraine, Azerbaijan is a potentially very important partner, just as Ukraine is for Azerbaijan.
Relations between Azerbaijan and Russia are in a state of deep crisis. Volodymyr Zelensky's visit became a powerful catalyst for this deterioration, even though tensions had been building up for years.
We can see how relations between Azerbaijan and Russia are being destroyed right now. And even despite the fact that Russia brought elections and compensation for the downed plane, Azerbaijan accepted all of this, but it can't be said that this immediately restored the previous loyal relationship. In other words, Azerbaijan is clearly moving away from Russia and is obviously focusing on new partners.
Russia's status as a great power is a thing of the past. Today, the Kremlin is just a secondary player in global affairs. It is being forced to adapt to realities over which it no longer has any real influence.
Fico urgently changed his stance at the last minute. A loud statement shook the EU. The Prime Minister of Slovakia officially confirmed that he is flying to Moscow to meet with Putin. But here lies the main mystery. He categorically refused to attend the parade. Victory mania. Betrayal or a cunning plan? Who is really pulling Fico's strings? Watch.
Has this long-standing friendship really begun to fracture? And is Putin now starting to lose his key allies? Just a few days ago, the Prime Minister of Slovakia, Robert Fico, made his longtime friend, the Russian dictator Putin, uneasy. After an unexpected meeting with the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, in Yerevan, Fico announced that he would visit Moscow on May 9th and will meet with the Russian President Vladimir Putin. However, he will not be participating in the military parade dedicated to the Victory Day celebrations. He stated that he only plans to lay flowers at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Regarding
the visit to Moscow, again, there is no more aggressive rhetoric. That is, he says, yes, he will go, he will meet with Putin, but he will not take part in the parade.
I will lay flowers at the grave of the unknown soldier of the Red Army to thank on behalf of Slovakia and Slovaks for the liberation. And I have a brief meeting scheduled with President Putin. That's all. I will not attend any military parade.
At the same time, Fico defended his decision to go to Russia, which had previously been condemned by the European Commission.
I will not allow myself to be put in a situation where I would feel any guilt, Soviet. I am meeting with Putin and everyone is criticizing me. But when I return back after meeting with him in the corridors of Brussels, in the restrooms, everyone keeps asking me what he said.
Although just last week, Putin's senior aide, Yuri Ushakov, publicly assured everyone that the Slovak Prime Minister would be at the parade on the May 9th celebrations.
Ushakov confirmed that Fico, among other foreign guests, would be at the Victory Parade in Moscow.
The seasoned political analyst Petro Lishchuk is firmly convinced that, in all likelihood, the strategic plans have undergone a significant change.
This is not for... Robert Fico is often described by political analysts as a leader who mirrors the interests of the Russian government, consistently aligning his policies with Moscow and acting as a strategic proxy for the Kremlin's own political agenda within the broader European political framework and its complex diplomatic landscape.
And in fact, Fico himself didn't really want to go to this parade that much.
He is fully and deeply conscious of the potential security threats and risks associated with holding this parade, and how the senior Russian political leadership is worried about the overall safety and security of this public event. Of course, Fico doesn't need any of this.
Today, Robert Fico is trying to balance on two chairs. After the weakening of his close ally Viktor Orban's position in Hungary,
Fico is now obviously in quite a specific situation where he is widely considered to be the most pro-Russian leader of any European country. And it seems that he does not appear to feel particularly at ease in this specific role. Because previously, the brunt of the criticism was consistently borne by Orban, who constantly made various pro-Russian statements, and Fico would simply join him. Consequently, he was no longer the primary figure, and while he received various strategic benefits from Russia, at the same time, Orban took the main hits from the international community. And for Fico, of course, this was very comfortable.
At the same time, analysts also note Fico's attempts to shift his policy to a more...
When you are looking at all the different options available, choosing a moderate one is often the most balanced and sensible approach to take. This is because it provides a reasonable middle ground that avoids extremes while still meeting your primary requirements in a very practical and sustainable way for the long term. That is exactly why he is trying to maneuver into a better position. And he will make fewer overtly pro-Russian statements, waiting to see, in fact, how the situation will develop further.
Interestingly, besides everything else, Fico has changed his position and rhetoric, not only regarding the parade, but also in relation to Ukraine. In
recent times, he has made several statements that are not anti-Ukrainian, but on the contrary are actually favorable toward Ukraine. In particular, he no longer objects to Ukraine joining the European Union. At the same time, his essence does not change at all. He remains the same unprincipled pro-Russian politician as before, but he has always been more cautious, especially since he clearly sees Orban's fate. He understands that there will also be threats to his own political future. Right now, there is a lot of talk about Fico planning to hold early parliamentary elections. It is quite possible that he simply doesn't want to, let's say, stir up an excessive number of public scandals on all of these complex and sensitive issues at the moment, and just wants to calmly and methodically prepare himself for early elections to successfully maintain his firm and steady hold on political power in the near future.
With that, that's all from us. This was me, Renata Aslanova. Even more hellish news from the front in our next episode. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, subscribe and leave a like. See you soon!